Today on the Five Guys podcast, we have a very special treat for you. We are joined by a special guest who's going to be getting a live coaching call from me. So, this young man is only 18 years old and already is trying to pursue the path of financial independence. Let's listen in for some amazing insights. I can promise you, you're not going to find this anywhere else. Nowhere else can you find live coaching calls between a financial advisor and someone who's looking to get help with their finances. So, with that, this is the Five Guys. Let's get started. All right. So, like I said, we're just going to continue it going, continue this conversation. Dylan, would you please tell me a little bit about yourself? I know that you're going to be going into the Army soon. What prompted you to want to go into the Army?
It was basically just I didn't want to go to college, and that just gave me it's pretty much three more years, because that's the term I'm going for, to think about like life and what my career would be.
Okay. Why did you not want to go to college?
School's just not for me. I mean, I can't sit in a
Okay.
classroom for 6 hours, and I don't know. I pretty much, yeah. This is not for me.
Okay. You got that ADD, son. I'm used to that. No, I have the same thing. So it's cool. Now, the reason I think that you and I met is I have a friend who's in San Diego who told you about me. And
Mhm.
then, he gave you my number or something. And then we got in contact that way. And I know, so what job did you guys, so he's an adult, he's my age. So he's working and he told me that you guys met on the job. So what job did you guys meet at?
It was some job in San Diego. It was called Vulture. It's like some bar or something like that, but it's a drum plumbing, commercial plumbing job.
Okay. You're just turned 18, just graduated high school, going to be going to the Army. How long have you been working as a plumber, or how long have you been working in general while still in school?
Since I was 16, the day I turned 16, I got a job at Albertsons, and then I worked there for close to 2 years. And then this December, I was like, I cannot deal with the people and all this minute, mundane job. I'm like, I got to do something that's actually going to bring me skills in life. So I
Hmm.
decided I was looking for a plumbing job, because I was looking up like what's going to be in the future, like who's going to be making the big bucks. And plumbing just kept coming up and up and up. I was like, okay, let me try this. So I was looking for plumbing jobs, and I found that through a friend of my neighbor's, and he works for the company, and we got in touch, and that's how I got hired there ever since December. And then I recently quit last week.
That's pretty interesting. Most people that I talk to who are young, and granted, I don't talk to a lot of people who are 18 years old. That's not really what I go for often. But when I do talk to someone who's 18, they usually don't have the foresight to look at what's going to be in the future, what jobs are going to bring me skills in the future. Did your parents teach you that? Or like, where did you learn to like look ahead to the second, maybe third order consequences of your actions today?
I give a lot of credit to pretty much the internet. I mean, when I was 16, the internet, working out, just that whole mentality that all those people in that, like the gym community, they bring, like working hard, worth ethic. And then it just set me down that rabbit hole of like looking into like finance and gaining wealth. And I was like, another community. And I was like, okay, let me try this. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. And I like that you said that. So you're someone that likes to go to the gym, you like to work out, like to be strong.
mhm.
Good. I think that a lot of people they look for the quick fix. And when it comes to fitness, I'm also a gym rat. Like I've been going to the gym ever since I was a kid. My dad, he was a Marine, and while he was in the Marine Corps, he actually did bodybuilding. So I remember growing up and like watching my dad lift, and then my dad would take me to Gold's Gym when I was still a little kid, and he would punish me and train me all the ways that you shouldn't train a kid. That's all. That's my childhood trauma. But
Mhm.
we went through all that stuff, and nowadays I still like to work out, and I find so many parallels between finance and fitness. So now that I know that you like to work out and stuff, I'm going to try to make those connections for you so you can understand it. Before we get into that, so are you still plumbing right now? Are you still doing plumbing, or is that done?
No, it's done as of last Friday.
Okay, cool. So how much longer till we're leaving for Army boot camp?
July 22nd is the day I leave.
July 22nd. And then we were talking before the podcast that you're going to have a new MOS and everything, and you're going to be, training underneath that. afterwards, you did say earlier that you're only going to do 3 years. Do you see a career in the Army, or are you only planning to do 3 years and then get out?
I was offered to do 5 years for the same MOS, but also 3 years. So I had the option in my hand. I literally had the two papers in my hand, 3 years or 5 years. And basically, how they described it to me, if you do 3 years and you re-enlist 18 months before you actually get out. And that
Mhm.
18 months counts towards that new enlistment. So you're not doing like the full 3 years, you're doing 18 months, and then you get to decide if you're gonna enlist for more years. So I'd rather do 18 months and see if I really enjoy the military and then get those benefits, because if you re-enlist, you get either a sign-in bonus or you get to pick where you go. Those benefits
Mhm.
just all added up, and I was like, why would I not do the 3 years or the 18 months, decide if I really want a career or not, and then continue re-enlistment, kind of like re-enlistment process, or just do the 3 years and then get out. I'm like, okay, that wasn't for me, and then figure something out from there. So it just kind of all worked
Okay.
out for the 3 year plan.
I like that. What I'm hearing a lot, Dylan, is that you're doing something that most people your age aren't doing. You're thinking ahead. You're trying to set up right now future Dylan or current Dylan. You're trying to set future Dylan up for a good system. And
Mm.
that's what a lot of things with finance is, and a lot of things with fitness. It's not that not that you go to the gym today to be buff today. It's that you go to the gym today so that tomorrow you can do what other people can't do.
Yeah.
It's the exact same things when it comes to fitness. Why did you choose to go to the Army rather than just stick with plumbing? Because as you know, plumbing is a job that's going to continue to be in demand. Things like ChatGPT, when it came out, everyone thought, oh man, it's going to go for truck drivers. It's going to go for blue collar workers. But what we found is going for white collar workers. It's going after attorneys. It's going after CPAs. It's going after financial advisors, because it's starting to show people that the information that they thought they needed, that's no longer, or the information that they were holding secret is now free common knowledge that you can ask a chatbot to do it. But at the end of the day, someone still needs to come into your house. They need to turn wrenches. They actually need to do physical things that robots can't do. So what made you choose the Army over going into plumbing?
I've always, ever since I was probably 14 or 13, I've always wanted to go into the military. At first, it was the Marine Corps, and then it molded into through fitness. As soon as I started, because as soon as I turned 16, I was like addicted to fitness. It turned into I want to do Navy SEALs, and then it
Okay.
switched over just from me doing my research and stuff like that. It switched over to, okay, Navy SEALs isn't going to be a lifelong career, at least for me. So I would rather just do Army. And um because I chose Army over plumbing, it's because mainly it's just molding that what do
Maybe
you call
character would be a good
it?
word.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Character. I mean, I know I already, like you're saying, I already have like the foundation of it, but I feel like a lot of military people like just have it fully developed, and I want that. So I feel like it's going to be a very character development building process.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I mean, fortunately and unfortunately, the way that they build your characters, first they break you down and then they build you back up. I think it's interesting that you chose the Army over the Navy and the Marine Corps. So, for those of you who are listening in on the podcast, you don't know, Dylan, did you grow up in San Diego, or did you just recently move to San Diego?
Now, born and bred in Escondido, San Diego.
Born and bred in Escondido. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, I also grew up in San Diego. There is one of the largest Marine Corps bases in the world there, and one of the largest naval fleets. I'm sure growing up, you met a lot of Marines, most likely, or saw a lot of Marines, and probably met quite a few Navy guys. But there aren't that many Army people in San Diego. I know they have an old decommissioned outpost up in Orange County, and then they have a few in LA, but there's not too much in San Diego. So what made you choose the Army over the two that most people who grew up in San Diego end up going to, either Army or Navy, or sorry, Marine Corps or Navy?
It's funny you say that, because I was born here and I've lived here all my life. I don't want to be here anymore. Like I want to go explore. And the career I chose in the military or the Army, I don't know if I could have chose in the Marine Corps, especially along with the Navy, because they're more stationed like here along like the coast.
The coast.
And
Yeah.
my MOS airborne, or my MOS, and the fact that I have airborne on my contract, they enabled me to either, I'm going to 4 different places. Um, I'm either going to Italy, Germany, Alaska, or South Carolina, and those are all not in California. So I'm happy with any of
Hmm.
them. I'd rather do Italy and Germany, but
Yeah.
whichever I get picked, I get picked. But it's somewhere outside of
Okay.
California.
What's the big hey to get? What do you want to get out of California for? As someone who grew up in San Diego, left San Diego, and now is looking for a way maybe to get back to San Diego, what's the reason that you're kind of done with living in California, maybe San Diego in general? Or is it a California thing or is it a San Diego thing?
I just want to experience something new, pretty much.
Okay.
And I know California is not all the same throughout the whole coast, but it's pretty much the same. So I want to just experience something like complete coin flip.
Are you comfortable sharing your MOS on the podcast? What you're going to be doing in the
Yeah,
Army? And
it's
what is that going to
called
be?
combat engineer.
Combat engineer.
I've heard. Um, I don't. It's funny. I don't exactly know what they do because depending on the unit, you're doing something different. So it's either like I've heard they blow up barbed wire, they look for mines and detect mines. There's some that, especially the airborne units, they jump like the clip jumpers and stuff like that. It just depends on what unit I get sent to.
Yeah. When you told me earlier that you were a combat engineer, I kind of perked up because my father, his MOS for the Marine Corps, he was combat engineer as well. He made it all the way up to first sergeant, and then he was actually on deck to go to master sergeant, which is the highest you can go in the Marine Corps in terms of enlisted. But at that point, he was 20 some odd years in, and he wanted to spend time with his wife and kids, and that's when he ended up leaving. So, I'm very aware of what you're going to be doing, but I always like to talk to everyone. Just so you know, if you guys aren't very familiar with the military community, MOS stands for Military Occupational Specialty, which is basically your job in the military. Cool. So let's go ahead and move on from that and start to get into the finance thing. I know that that's the reason that you reached out to me. You want to get a better feeling as to that. So before we get into that, Dylan, what would you like to accomplish today? What is it that you're looking to learn from me?
Mainly I got all the foundation of like the mentality of how to build wealth and all that stuff. But I need the intricate parts of it, like all the stuff that not really a lot of people know about, like buying homes and stuff like that. Like all the newbie mistakes, because I've never personally bought or gone into that stuff with buying a home and shit like that. But it's
Yeah.
just
And feel free to cuss, bro. It's all good. Yeah, I know you're kind of like shit. You can say it. Go for it. So tell me then that you're trying to learn quote unquote the secrets. Like what are the secrets? What are the things? What are the newbie mistakes that I need to avoid doing
yep.
in order to be financially successful? Okay, so what did your parents teach you about money and finance and stuff like that? Did they teach you anything? Did they teach you a lot? What did you learn about money
Um,
growing up?
Not much. I mean, just like any other kid, you get $50 here when you're at Christmas and birthdays, another 20, but I would always spend it as a kid. I was never
Hmm.
frugal with my money at all up until 16 mark, where everything, started to change, but that's pretty much how I've been. They haven't really, I mean, they've taught me stuff, but not to the degree of like this.
Okay, and to be fair to your parents and to be fair to most parents, I think a lot of us as we grow up, we think that our parents are like ordained by God and they know everything when it comes to everything. You can ask them, why does the sun rise in the east and set in the west? And they have a good answer for it. And especially with money,
Mhm.
we all think that our parents know what they're doing when it comes to money. But in truth, most people have no idea what they're doing. And that's the reason that I ask this question to every single client. And most people give me the same answer. I learned nothing from my parents or very small from my parents. But I guarantee you, Dylan, that you learned a lot more from your parents, maybe not from what they taught you implicitly, by like sitting you down and telling you this is how you balance a checkbook, this is debit versus a credit, this is all these things. But you learned a lot from watching them and seeing how
Yep.
they interact with money. Today, how are your parents financially? I mean, you guys are living in San Diego. It's one of the most expensive places in the world. For those of you on the podcast, just because you live in San Diego, it does not mean that you're rich. There are many people in San Diego who are not doing very financially well. It's actually super common because it's one of the most expensive places in the world, and there's not every single job is going to give you the six-figure salary that you need to survive. So how are your parents doing financially, and what did you learn from them watching them maybe deal with struggles or do really well when it comes to handling their money?
It's cool because, or I learned basically growing up, it molded into what it was today. So when I was a kid, they started to struggle a little about what you're talking about. They started to struggle, and then as I grew up, my dad just found a way pretty much, and now we're not really struggling anymore. So, I mean, we're
Okay.
well off. I'm not going to go into the details, but we're, middle class. But you know, there's struggles with everybody. But now, as he's getting older, because my dad's 63,
Okay.
so he's getting up in there in the age, and he's about to retire in a few years. I don't know if he's always been like that. Or, he was always struggling up until recently. All I know is now he's bettered in that sense.
And did you ever talk to your dad about what that shift was? Because you said there was a time where he was struggling. Maybe you were growing up struggling. Then all of a sudden, it seems like there was a shift, and now we're doing better financially. Did you ever talk to him like, what was it that he figured out, or did he get a better job? What's going on there?
He was working two jobs for, I don't, maybe 5 years. And before he was only working the one, and it was me and my brother, my mom, and my mom, she's awesome. She all throughout our whole childhood, both my parents, they made sure we were active and like doing karate, Krav Maga, soccer, all that stuff. So they were pouring all their money. I'm assuming this is what happened, pouring all their money into our activities as children. And then now that we're moving out and stuff like that, it's getting easier. And so he doesn't have to work that second job. He stopped working probably like 2 years ago or a year ago,
Okay.
because they went out of business here in I think it's Temecula where that second job was, but
Okay.
he's working the one job now, and he's doing fine.
So seeing your dad go through that, I mean, if he's working two jobs, were the two full-time jobs, two part-time jobs, or what do you know what that whole deal was?
It was one full time, one part time, one from
Okay.
5 a.m. to 3, and then from 3:30 to like 10, or maybe it was two full
Oh,
time. Now that I'm thinking out of that, or
holy
10 or
shit.
9,
Okay.
10 or 9
Was your
every
dad
day.
gone like 5 days a week? How
Yep.
the hell?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I don't know your father, but I'm going to tell your father, like, he's a freaking trooper. Like, that is
Yep.
not that. I can't imagine how hard that is. So, what did you learn from watching your dad? I mean, he must have been, you must have seen him coming home every single day. I mean, the end of the day, obviously, he's coming home, he's tired. What did you learn passively from watching your father work his ass off to provide for your sibling, and your mother?
Basically, now you mention it, when you asked me what I learned from my parents, I learned that there's always a possible way that you can get out of money problems, and if you're still in that problem, it just means that you're not working hard enough. That's
Good.
pretty much.
No, that's good. I'm glad you had that insight. What a lot of people, like, again, I have these conversations all the time, and people, when I ask them, what did your parents teach you about money? They always say, my parents didn't teach me anything about money, blah, blah, blah. And the more we go down this rabbit hole, they start to realize, oh, actually, my parents did teach me a lot. They taught me a lot about money. Some of those things serve me well today. Like, if I work hard, I can get out of the situation, but it just takes effort. And then some things that they taught you, maybe either directly or indirectly, worked for them, but no longer serves you today.
Mhm.
An example of that growing up for me was, I was always told, the way that you're going to become financially independent, or the way that you're going to live a good life, is you have to find a job that pays a lot of money, and then you save as much as you can, you buy a house, and then eventually you die, or like, and then you live the life. My parents were both military, so when I asked them, like, hey, how did you guys retire? Or they were still working, but how do you guys plan to retire? They said, oh, we plan on getting pensions. For you and I, don't, given that if you stay in the army, you're going to get a pension. Majority of jobs don't have pensions anymore. They're completely
Yeah.
gone. Additionally, the way that retirement used to work, it was a three-legged stool. The three legs were number one, Social Security. Number two, the pension. Number three, your own savings. Well, there was an act called the 401k Act, which now we know as the 401k, that brought a new tax loophole. And then it gave companies the ability to get rid of the pension by now, instead of the company taking on the burden of paying for their employer or their employees who stayed with them for long enough for the rest of their life in retirement, they now put the burden of saving for your retirement on the employee and said, if you want to retire, you need to save in your own 401k. And now that three-legged stool of your own savings, Social Security, pension now becomes a two-legged stool. And if you ever try to sit on a two-legged stool, you know that it's pretty off balance. And there's a lot of fear out there that Social Security is also going to be going away for our generation. And now we're basically sitting on a one-legged stool. Now, I think that's a bunch of hullabaloo, and I don't think we're going to run out of Social Security. If you look at majority of the information, people in my age demographic, I'm 12 years older than you, 14 years older than you. I expect to get Social Security when I retire, or when I hit that age, but I expect it to be 35% less than what I should be getting right now. And for you, who knows, it might be 40% less. But that doesn't mean that Social Security is gone. But people on the path of financial independence, and the things I try to teach people is, I can't control if I'm going to have Social Security in the future. I really can't control if I'm going to have a pension in the future unless I decide to go down a very different career path than I've decided. But what I can control is I can control how much money I save for myself. So rather than sitting here and bitching that jobs aren't giving me Social Security, I might not get Social Security, rather than bitching and saying these jobs should give me my pension, I'm going to focus on what I actually can control. What I actually can control is how much money I'm making, how much money I'm saving, and the way that I'm investing that for my own future.
Yeah.
Watching your dad go through and like working a lot, and you saw him you saw him working so hard. I have to imagine that when you would come up to him and ask him like, "Hey, Dad, I want to buy this stuff," were your parents always like 100% down for the cause and they would buy you whatever you wanted, or was there a lot of like, we can't afford that?
Nah, I would have to save from Christmas and birthday if I wanted something big. Like if it was like, I want some chicken from the store, then they would buy it. But if it was like
Of
you want
course.
a bike, you're gonna have to save. You're gonna have to save from Christmases and birthdays.
Okay. When you were a kid, did you get to do chores and stuff to make extra money, or was it just like you got gifts on specific holidays?
Yeah, I just got gifts from specific holidays. You had to do chores, but you didn't get a what do they call it? We get weekly pay or something like that from your parents.
Yeah, I don't know. I never had that either.
Yeah.
Yeah, same boat here. Like it was just, if there are chores to do in the house, and if you're a part of the family, you're doing those chores. So you're not going to get compensation for being a part of the family. It's
Yep.
just, it's implicit that you're going to do it. So I like the way that your parents did that. So I'm sure you learned a lot from your parents. Did you learn any? I know you've learned some good things from them. In that, I learned to work hard. I learned that if there's a problem, I can get out of it if I keep working hard. And maybe if I'm not getting out of this, if I'm not finding the solutions because I'm not working hard enough. What fears did you learn? What things did you learn that maybe looking back on it now wasn't the best thing to learn about money?
Spending, we do a lot of like spending on like trinkets and stuff like that, like stuff we don't need, or we used to. We cut back on it, or my parents cut back on it a lot now because they're aware of it. Like Amazon is a huge one. And my whole family, my grandparents, was in the same boat, or are in the same boat, where everybody like buy. They scroll through Amazon and they say, "Oh, that's pretty cool," and then they buy it, and they get next thing you know, you got like 10 Amazon packages at your doorstep, and minus like $500 because
Yeah.
that stuff is tricky because it's like it's right there, and all you got to do is plug in your information once, and then you can just buy stuff with a click of a button. That's pretty
And
much the main.
so maybe controlling impulse, like you get to see them, you see like maybe their impulse control. Well, good in certain aspects, like they have the impulse. Some people who are working two jobs would have the impulse to not show up to one of those jobs because I'd rather sleep than work two jobs. But when it comes to, and this is something I grew up with not a lot of money, Dylan. So something that I saw a lot in my community growing up was people would work really hard. They'd work one job, they'd work two jobs just to survive. And then they finally get that paycheck and they feel, I work so hard and I need to get something that's mine. Like I need something to make me feel good about how hard I just worked. And then they go out and they blow their money on something that's going to make them feel momentarily good. You know, you buy that new bike, you buy those new set of shoes or whatever it is, and you get that dopamine rush or that serotonin rush of like momentary happiness. And then 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, maybe a day later, you realize, shit, all the money that I just worked for the past week is gone. And now I have these new pair of earrings.
Yep.
Watching that, do you find yourself in the same situation? Did you ever find yourself buying stuff that you didn't need just because you wanted that short-term hit? Or did you learn from your parents
Uh,
and decided, I don't want to be a part of that?
100%. When I was 16 and younger, every single birthday, because kids are a lot more vulnerable to instant gratification and just buying like, oh, I want that candy bar now, and I'm gonna spend all my money on it, or any toy they see. As soon before I turned 16, 100%, I was like that all the time. Any hit of dopamine, I would give me that. But as soon as I turned 16 and started getting into all that stuff, I was like, maybe I shouldn't be like this, and started saving up my money. So I got like both sides of
Interesting.
that.
So it sounds like there's a distinct age as to which everything changed for you. So the 16 number is where it's at. And for most people, Dylan, and for Dylan, first I'm going to tell you, you're way ahead of the curve. Most people don't figure out this shit until I have clients. I have had prospects who wanted to become clients of mine that are in their 60s, in their 50s, trying to get to retirement, and they still haven't figured out what you've already figured out at the age of 16. Making money is important, yes. But what's more important than making money is how you're spending your money. If I'm making $60,000, but I'm saving $30,000, I am far more wealthy than the person who is making $200,000 but spending $230,000. There's always different sides to the equation. You need to look at both sides in order to move forward and be good at finances. So, what happened at that age of 16? Like, I know you said you found some stuff on the internet. What did you find at first? What started this rabbit for you?
Well, in order to get to that, I mean, so I'd say probably freshman year when COVID was rampant, just like everybody else, I was in that pit of like depression almost. Super, super depressed for freshman and sophomore, bleeding into sophomore year. And then the ending of sophomore year, summer, that's when I turned 16. I was like, my friends started introducing me into the gym. And I
Mm-hmm.
can't stress this enough. I don't know what it was. I was depressed because I didn't have a purpose. Like I don't know what it was, but that was like the main reason of depression is like all these other kids have like I'd say like passions like soccer or music, and I didn't have anything because I didn't like anything. And the moment I got introduced to the gym, it just completely, I found it. Like it was like a flip of a switch. I was like, that's what I want. That's what I like. And from there, it just sent me down that rabbit hole of just, oh, I can integrate dedication that I have at the gym into regular life. Like it's not just I lift weights every day, I can save every day. So it just kind of bled into that. And then also, it did annoy me when I was like 17, 16, that I wasn't old enough to do a lot of things like stocks and credit card and all that, because it was just, I was like, I want to do this now, but
Yeah.
along with, but it taught me that I'm glad it didn't happen because it taught me that I need to wait. Like patience is very key in all this. And if I don't have patience, then I'm going to lose a bunch of money, like a lot of people do when they first turn 18. And they'll, you know, it's, I don't know. Patience
You know,
is patience and dedication.
yeah. Dylan, the more we talk, the more I just find myself liking you more and being more impressed by the realizations you've come to at such a young age. What you're at right now is probably where I was mid 20s. So you're nearly a decade ahead of me as to where I was. So keep up that great work. The one thing that I like about going to the gym and working out is you're keeping you accountable to yourself. At the end of the day, there's no one there who's going to cheer you along for going to the gym. If you go around and you tell people your reps and your sets and your workout plan, no one gives a shit.
Yeah.
what you're doing in the gym. No one cares. Everyone wants the results. One of the things that I do outside of working out and doing this podcast and being a financial advisor, I'm also a jujitsu coach. So I teach jujitsu to Gracie Barra adults, or adults through Gracie Barra jujitsu. And a lot of people, they ask, like, what's the secret to jujitsu? How do I just become better? How can I be a good fighter automatically? And I always tell them there's no secret. You have to show up every day or as often as you possibly can. And you have to fight as hard as you can every day. And you're going to get a little bit better. It's the exact same thing with fitness, right? If there's someone that comes to me and they say, like, Chris, I want to get jacked, I want to get swole, I want to look like Dylan, what do I need to do? I probably need the right pre-workout, I need the right post-workout. Should I do cold plunging? Should I do a hot sauna? And then I always ask them the same three questions. Are you eating right? Are you sleeping right? And are you exercising? Those three things right there are going to get you 80 to 90% of the way to where you want to go fitness wise. Giving a shit about what pre-workout you take, if you're doing a cold plunge afterwards or before, if you're stretching before or after, all these things, maybe you're going to add 1% at max to the benefit of the actual hard work. And the actual hard work, again, is working out, eating right, sleeping right. It's the exact same thing with finance. With finance, there's three pillars. And the three pillars are how much money you're making, how much money you're spending, and then those two things equals the gap. And the gap is your driver to financial independence. That's that money that you're saving that you're now investing into whatever asset class you think is best in order to give you the best return for your buck. The goal of financial independence is to have passive income streams that are making money for you while you sleep. And there really isn't an easy way, or I guess there is an easy way of doing that, but there's always going to be a trade-off in all of these three things of doing balance. Too many people, they focus on the forest or the trees and they ask, hey, in order for me to invest, what stock should I buy? Should I start doing options? Which cryptocurrency should I buy? And again, the question I always ask them is how much money do you have? How much money are you making? How much money are you spending? Then after that, we can talk about the investments. Because right now you're young, you have the ability to go to the gym and maybe you don't sleep very well, maybe you don't eat very well, and just due to God's gift of being young and your genetics, you're going to stay pretty healthy just by working out. But if you neglect these two other ones, sleeping right and eating right, eventually it's going to catch up with you. And all the working out in the world is not going to be able to overcome not sleeping well and not eating well. Same thing with
Yeah.
finance. You could be the world's greatest investor, return 100% every single year. But if you're spending all the money that you make and you're not making good money, then this tool over here, focusing on the investments, is going to fall out. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So, how do you feel currently about your financial progress in the past 2 years of what you've? So, the day that you figured out that, hey, my body is a temple, I can train my body. After training my body, I realized I can train my mind. After training my mind, I realized I can be in control of my money. It's been 2 years since that day, if it around. How do you feel currently about your financial progress?
I would say, I don't know, it's hard to, I'd say I'm doing probably like a 8 out of 10.
Okay.
Like I know there's aspects that I can do better, that I like to, like stitch up the loose ends. But overall, I'd say I'm doing better than I would have done if I didn't know everything I knew. Like,
Okay.
all the financial advice.
Okay. And what would take you? So right now you're 8 out of 10. What would take you to a 10 out of 10? Do you think? What knowledge do you think is out there? What things do you think you could button up?
100% learning about all the intricacies of the housing market.
Okay.
Like, I know it depends on the state and all that, but like I have no idea how much anymore. Like it did have a guess, like 50K a year ago, but now I have zero clue because it's going up and down of the housing
What
market
do
and
you
like
mean by
how much I
what do you mean by 50? What do you mean by 50K? I don't understand what
for
you mean by that.
sorry, I'm thinking in my head down payment on a house. Like I don't
Okay.
know how much I need to save in order to have, I mean, with the military I'm gonna have to pay zero for a down payment, but
Mm-hmm.
um regularly, like how much would somebody have to save in order to get just like a regular house just to live in, like if they wanted to move out. Like most people are gonna rent, but to me, renting makes zero sense. On like, why wouldn't you just put a down payment on a house and then all the rent money that you would be paying to somebody that's not going anywhere, instead you're paying off the house and then you could sell it and get all that money or some of that money back. Like I just don't
Uh,
understand why people would rent other than to not have a permanent place to live.
Interesting. That's an interesting psych. Okay, who taught you that? Where did you learn that renting is throwing away your money? Was that from your parents? Was that from online?
Just my perception of it and how I've learned about it on the internet.
Where do you currently get most of your financial advice? I know most of it's probably going to be on the internet. What sites are we going to, or Reddit forums, or what are we doing?
Google, and then just I don't know the sites because it's different ones every time. It's not like the
Yeah, every
same
time you
ones,
Google,
but
you just
just
you end.
different. Yeah, I just go through like a few, like 10, 20, and if they're all saying the same thing, then it's got to be semi-true, kind of. I don't know. Dodgy with the internet, and sometimes everybody lies about the
Yes.
same thing. Like fitness advice, people lie about it all the time just to get money. And in that stake, it's hard to know 100% if it's true, but not a lot of people talk about financial advice, especially like the intricate details of like the more uh confusing topics like
Yeah.
housing and credit card. Like nobody seems to know like how the whole credit score works, like and where you're like how do you get points. Like you ask the banks, like when I got my credit card, I asked the bank and they didn't even seem to know. Like what, like why can't you just give me a straight up answer? And they're like, I don't know. And it's like what.
For for the credit card points, or for how your credit score is calculated?
Both. Like how do they correlate? Like how do you get a yeah, just both. They didn't tell me either one. They couldn't.
We can go into that if you want to, but I want to go into the housing thing first. So for those of
Yep.
you on the podcast, if you want to learn more about how your credit scores determine how to improve it, I'd recommend going to episode 26 of the Fi Guys. I actually break down all the 5 components that go into your credit score and then how to improve every single one of them. And if you want to learn about more about credit card points, I would point you to episode 30 and 31. Those are 2 credit card hacking things. I've been credit card hacking for the past decade now. Me and my wife use credit card hacking to go on 6 to 9 vacations a year. So I broke down everything that I know in those two pod. So that's episode 26 for the credit cards, episode 30 and 31 in travel hacking. And if you want to, Dylan, we can talk about all that stuff if you wanted. But first, I want to get back to the rent versus buy debate, because it's actually a debate nowadays. And yes,
Hey,
you're historically correct. Renting was stupid, and that's back in, let's say, the 1980s, 1970s, maybe. That's when it made sense to always buy, because if you could either rent a house and pay, I don't know, $1,000 for your rent, or you could buy a house and pay $800 for your mortgage plus a little bit upfront. Well, that's all well and good. But unfortunately, nowadays, housing prices have increased astronomically. A house back in the 1980s, your parents might have been able to work a normal job, or maybe not your parents, but someone from the boomer generation. They'd be able to work a normal job, making the average pay, and be able to just straight up buy a house, be able to
mhm.
put down 20% and then pay that off, because they may be making $50,000 in their job and the house costs $200,000, 4 times their income. Nowadays, salaries have not kept up. The average person in America, if you're making $60,000 as a married couple, or no, $72,000 as a married couple, you're considered average. If you times 72 times 4, what is that? I don't know. I don't want to do quick math on the podcast because every time I do, I get torn up. But 72 times 4, Dylan, go.
Well, 7 times 4
It's
is
okay.
28.
288. So
288.
288,000. So do you think you could find a house for $288,000 in most parts of America that you would want to live in?
I don't know. It depends. Like I know I've seen some houses. Probably, yeah, depending on the state.
Okay. depending on the state. The most states that have those $288,000 houses, do you think the median salary for those people is $74,000? Or do you think it's a little bit lower?
No, way lower.
Yeah.
I like 30K.
Yeah. And that's what makes it much more difficult. We're not in the same world. So when someone tells you the best way to grow wealth is to invest in real estate, they're only telling you what they did. And most people that when I talk to who are older people that say like, oh, I bought my house and I'm so smart that I thought into the future as to what house is going to cost me the most. They're deluding themselves with a story. At the end of the day, they know what happened. They said, I need a house. That house looks nice. I don't mind living here. And my job is here. And they bought a house. Due to the grace of God, that house went from $200,000 to $600,000 to $800,000 to $1.2 million over 30 years. And now that person gets to say, look at me, I'm a fucking genius. I selected the right house. Where at the end of the day, it was all pure luck. You could have either purchased a house in San Francisco or you could have purchased a house in Detroit. And depending on where you chose that house had nothing to do with your foresight. It had to do with where you were living, where your family was, and where your job was. And if you bought the house in San Francisco, you did really well. You bought the house in Detroit, sorry. That's how most people go through life trying to figure these things out. So when it comes to how much money do I need to put down for a down payment for a house, it's going to depend. If you want to avoid PMI, which is private mortgage insurance, you want to put 20% down. 20% down, even on a $500,000 house, which unfortunately nowadays is a fucking starter home, $500,000 is a starter home, that's $100,000 that you have just straight cash ready to go.
Yeah.
You are very lucky in that you're going to have the VA loan, which is an amazing one that gets you 0% down and usually lower interest rates. But if you're going to put 0% down, you have to remember that your mortgage is now going to be higher. So rather than putting down that 100,000 and then now you have to pay off 400,000, well, now you have to pay off 500,000 in 30 years. So my monthly payment's going to be higher. So now you're going to have to say, what am I willing to sacrifice? Am I willing to sacrifice money right now that I have? And obviously we don't even have $100,000. So we can use real numbers. You know, you've saved up over the past 2 years. And I think this is amazing. You've saved up about $17,000. That's kick-ass, dude. Most people who are your age have nothing to their name. Actually, most people at your age have like debt. So they're negative because they got their first credit card or whatever and went and wrecked their lives. But I don't think you're going to fall into that trap. So if you have $17,000, you could basically purchase, if you weren't trying to do the VA loan, you could purchase like $100,000 house.
Ooh.
So, I mean, if you're in San Diego, you choose what box you want and you can have whatever box and it's yours. So when it comes towards real estate, it's one of the most difficult things to talk about because so many people have such strong visceral reactions to what they think is. Same with you, where you think that renting is stupid. Renting is throwing money away. Well, when I rent a house, the house I'm currently in is a rental. It's a huge house. I have a gigantic house and it's a rental. My rent is the most amount of money I'm going to pay a month for my housing. Your mortgage is the least amount of money you're going to pay for your housing. So when I rent, that means I get to control my cost. And I know if I earn this much a year, I know this much for sure is going towards housing for each year because you're going to renew your lease each year. If I get a mortgage, well, I should predict that this much money will be going towards my mortgage. But what if the roof breaks? What if the AC goes out? When I'm renting, I call my landlord and that shit gets fixed up real quick. But if I'm owning a new roof, 15 grand, new AC unit, 10 to 15 grand. Most people end up in a situation where they're house poor. They put all the money they possibly could to get the down payment to get into the house. Now, the moment something breaks, what do? You end up putting it on credit cards. You end up taking a personal loan. You end up doing whatever you can to fix the problem. And then you get to tell me, is renting better than buying?
Yeah.
And I'm not here to tell you which one is right or which is wrong, but I'm here to tell you that there are ways to think about this differently. Additionally, when you buy a house, you're pretty much locked in for 7 to 10 years in order to break even. Because a lot of people, they'll look at the mortgage and they'll say, all right, the mortgage costs this, but then you also have to count in the time value of money. So you had to put down a lump sum of money to purchase the house first off. Well, that money could have been doing something else for you. You could have been putting into the market and compounding at 7, 9, 10% returns versus going into the house. Housing prices typically increase with inflation 2 to 3% per year. Most people don't like to think about that, but that's the way it typically works. If you were to buy a house in the 1990s and buy a $100,000 house in the 1990s, by the time you got to 2010, that house might be worth, I don't know, $300,000, $400,000. If you put $100,000 into the S&P 500 in 1990 and held off until, let's say, 2008 because there was a big crash. All right, so we just had some technical difficulties. Dylan and I are back. We were talking something about real estate, and I really don't remember what it was here. So Dylan, can you remind me what we were just talking about?
We were talking about renting versus buying.
Yes. Okay. We were talking about that, and I was going on a rant like I normally do. I was talking about how when you choose to rent, you are actually purchasing something. What you're purchasing is, first, you're purchasing the roof over your head. So that's automatic. You're also purchasing the ability to say, this is a fixed cost, and I know how much my housing is going to have. I think the biggest thing that you purchase when you rent is the ability to leave, and to leave pretty easily. I'm here in Arizona. If I decide that I don't want to be here anymore, gone. Call my landlord, tell him I'm done. We break the contract, out of here. If I own a house, a lot of people, they'll look at the price of the house. Again, they don't think about the time value of money. So they look at the fixed cost and they put all their money into it. At the end of the day, there are still a lot of costs around closing and getting into a house. Typically, you want to budget 10% of the house value into just closing the house and closing the deal for both the buying and the selling. So please, before you blow me up in the comments, for both the buying and the selling, 10% of the value is going to go towards costs of closing. That includes moving. That includes dealing with all of the showing all the stuff, paying for a realtor, all that BS. So when you purchase a house, if you're just going to live in it for 3 years, 4 years, while you may have gotten some appreciation on the house value going up, you're going to end up losing more money than what you got in appreciation, unless you're in some like very certain years, like maybe during COVID, when houses shot up astronomically out of nowhere. If you're in those certain situations, then yeah, housing works out. But for majority of the time, housing grows at 2 to 3% per year. And you have to factor in closing costs to say, is buying the house worth it or more worth it to me than renting? Especially with you now joining the Army, you don't know if your career is going to be what you want to do it with. You can decide, do I want to buy a house? And maybe every 2 or 3 years when the Army decides, hey, Dylan, I know you really like living here, but now we're going to send you here. Now you have to make a choice. Do I want to sell that house and deal with all the headache of all the closings? Or if you're renting, you can just be like, hey, landlord, I'm moving because of the military. They actually can't charge you for breach of contract at that point because it's due to the military. So you dip out. But if you purchase the house, that's not going to be an option. You just can't call the bank and be like, hey, the Army's telling me I have to move. So can we just stop this mortgage thing? You give me back my money and we're cool, good to go. That's not how that works. At the end of the day, you're going to have to decide either I sell the house and I lose all the money on the closing costs and lose out on capital gains taxes and all this BS, or I'm going to now have a rental property that I'm still paying a mortgage on, and now I'm a landlord. And if you want to be a landlord, that's cool, but that's another thing that you're now adding into your repertoire of things you're going to have to be good at. So what do you think about that? What do you think of my rent versus buy argue?
Honestly, I haven't thought about it like that. The perspective makes a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
you're not so tied down,
mm-hmm.
and you don't have to worry about anything, like all the problems that come with owning. Like if you're owning, like you said, if anything goes wrong, you're liable. Versus renting, landlords are liable.
Yeah. One thing I try to do here at the Fi Guys, and I try to do with my company, Mons on Wealth, is I never try to tell you exactly what to do. Because at the end of the day, I might not be right. I might not be wrong. I try to teach you to think through the problems as I would, and therefore you can make the decision that's best for you. Because for me, I don't want to be a landlord. I like living. I don't trust other people to live in my properties. I just don't. So that's not for me. I like stocks. That's my thing because I'm not having to deal with anybody. I just purchase them and I'm done. But maybe you're someone who says, hey, I want to be a landlord. That sounds really good. For someone like you, if you decide, Chris, I hear what you're saying. Maybe when I leave the army and like I want to buy a house, what I think would be best for you is house hacking. Do you know what house hacking is?
You mentioned it in one of your videos. I don't know, what remind me of it.
So house hacking is where you purchase that. So right now you're a single dude, or maybe you have a girlfriend, I don't know, but you're going to be moving into your own house by yourself. House hacking is where you purchase a house that is larger than what you need. So for you as a single guy living in your parents' house, I'm sure you're used to one room. So maybe you decide, I'm going to buy a house with 2 rooms inside of it, or a house with 3 rooms, or a house with 4 rooms, or a duplex, or a triplex, or a quadplex. I'm purchasing a house that is way bigger than what I need. And I'm going to rent out either the rooms or the other units in order for those other individuals who live there to help me pay for my mortgage and subsidize my housing. And therefore, if you ever have to leave for whatever reason, you're already halfway to being a landlord. You see, it's not a very big jump from being an owner to a landlord, but it is a very big jump from being a renter to an owner. And being from a renter to a landlord is a gigantic jump, and that's a huge chasm to try to figure out. So if you want to go down that rental real estate and like building up that real estate empire, house hacking when you're young is probably the best way to start, because you're purchasing a roof over your head and then you're using other people to subsidize your mortgage. And then with you having the ability to have 0% down due to your VA loan, which most people don't have, you're able to get into maybe a much larger house than you would normally be able to get into. Because the nice thing about house hacking is that you're not going to be buying shit properties that you don't want to live in. Because if you're house hacking, by definition, you have to live in the property for a year. So you're going to be buying a house that you live in so you want to live there. And by addition to that, you're also bringing people in who are going to be living next to you, maybe in the same house or maybe sharing the same wall as you. So you're not going to be bringing in terrible tenants that are going to be destroying the house, because you're going to tell them, hey, obviously don't tell them I'm the landlord. I always say, tell them that I'm the property manager and I live right here, because you want to live next to your tenants. You don't want your tenants to live next to their landlord. Because when something breaks, they're going to come over and be like, Dylan, this is broken. If you say, hey, I'm not the owner, even though you are the owner, I'm the property manager, my uncle's the owner. Therefore, you're not the bad guy anymore. Your uncle, who's way away in some other state, he's the bad guy. Plausible deniability is always great.
That makes sense. Just with a lot of crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of crazies, bro. And while rental is great, I'm not a big person into rental, but I don't knock it. Like, I think it's a great way to make money. But to say that rental properties is passive is completely wrong. Can it become passive? Yes, it can become passive. You get the right tenant, the right property manager, and the right property. But those are 3 things that you have to figure out. Up until that point, it is no way passive. Going out and finding a property is not passive. Finding a good tenant is not passive. Dealing with the toilets, the trash, the breakdowns, that is not passive. So you have to factor all those things in. And do I want to be a landlord? Do I want to deal with this shit? Do I want to deal with a call at 2 a.m. from some tenant of mine saying, hey, the toilet's clogged, and you ask them, well, did you plunge it out? Because those are things you're going to have to deal with if you decide to become a landlord. And those are the kind of things you have to think about when you purchase a house. Something I want to get into for you purchasing the home. Remember, when you go into the Army, this is all this is all public information. Army salary for someone brand new in E1 with under 2 years experience, which is a private, is $42,206.40 a year. Even with 0% down, what house can you afford with $24,206 a year?
None.
Yes.
I thought you said 40,000. I'm like, what?
No, 24,000. That's going to be your salary for your first year.
None to my knowledge. That'd be insane.
That would be insane. That'd be cool. I mean, that sounds great in portion, but I think one of the biggest things I do for my clients when I talk with them and I walk through their ideas is I try to get them to realize that the thing you're focusing on isn't the right thing to focus on, or I try to bump you away from your crazy ideas before you start wasting time and energy trying to figure out how to make your crazy idea work that wasn't going to work in the long run. You asking me, Chris, what house can I buy? By me telling you, well, with your 0% interest loan, you can pretty much get into a house 0% interest. But what house are you going to buy with $24,000? I don't know, but I don't want to live in that house. And that also means that every single dollar of that 24,000 is going just to housing. You now no longer have any more money to pay for insurance, pay for something getting broken, anything like that. But we're not stagnant, right? You're going to build up with your career in the military. And one of the
Yeah.
best things that the military has is housing. They subsidize your housing for the most part. So if you go to army.com, or it's goarmy.com or goarmy.gov, you'll go ahead and you'll see the first thing on the chart is here. Let me go. I'm actually going to show it to you so you can see it. Screen. So first thing you're going to see is, Dylan, can you see this screen here? Or is it loading for you?
There we go. Now you see it.
Okay. So this is what you're going to see from the Army, from goarmy.gov. Your total compensation for year one is $104,000. Well, that sounds all well and good. But you scroll down right here and it says this example is illustrated based on yearly Fort Campbell, Kentucky housing allowance for military soldier who is married in 2024 and a private E2 with less than 2 years. Well, there's a few assumptions being made. First off, you're going to come in as a private E1. You're probably going to get bumped up to a private E2, but they're basing their assumption, first off, that your salary is an E2. After that, they're saying that you get a $50,000 bonus. We already talked about it, that you're not getting a $50,000 bonus. So that's gone. After that, they're calculating in the cost of housing of you living inside the barracks or you living inside military housing. So they're counting that in. Then they're also saying, when you're in the military, we're going to pay for quite a bit of your food, Dylan. So don't worry about that. There's $5,000. And since we're in the military, we're not going to make you pay for all of your uniforms. We're going to pay for that or some of that too. Total compensation, $104,000. Total take home that you get to bring, $27,000. Oh, but it's worse than that because it's not $27,000. It's actually $24,000, and that's before taxes.
Oof, that hurts.
Now, I'm not trying to break your thought of going into the Army. The Army has a bunch of benefits.
Yep.
All of this is real benefits. This is not a fake. This is not a farce at all. You do get you will get the bonus if you decide to re-up again. You will get the housing. You will get the food. You will get the clothing. You will have so many things at your disposal by joining the Army. But when you ask me, well, Chris, how will I be able to buy a house? Bro, I don't know how you're going to be able to buy a house unless you decide, in order to buy a house, I'm not going to eat for the next few years.
Yeah.
And is that something you're willing to do? That's not something I'm willing to do, but that's a decision you can make. No, I like to eat. Another bonus that you're going to get from joining the military is something called a TSP. Do you know what a TSP is?
It
stands for a Thrift Savings Plan. Most people in the military or people who work for the government think that I have a thrift savings plan. And of course, whenever they talk to me, a financial advisor, they go, Chris, have you ever heard of a thrift savings plan? As if they're the smartest person in the world for figuring something out that everyone knows about. But a thrift savings plan is just the government equivalent of a 401k. That's all it is. It has some special powers that most 401ks don't have. For example, you can access it before you're 59 and a half without penalty. But other than that, it's a 401k. One of the nice things about the thrift savings plan, though, is that they keep it pretty simple. There's only 5 funds you can invest in, unlike most 401ks where there's 15 to 20 different things, or God forbid, you can invest in anything you want. And now you have 5,000 different things you can invest in. And now you get analysis by paralysis and you end up investing in nothing. The military tries to keep it simple. They give you 5 choices. Very, very easy. Do you know what those 5 choices are, Dylan?
Nope.
Well, let's talk about that. This is going to be very important for you. When you get into the Army, you're going to have the ability to defer up to, what is the TSP? Right now, current limits for a 401k is $23,000 a year. So that means you could honestly defer your entire payment For a TSP, oh, it's $23,000. So you can defer your entire amount of money that you're going to make in your first year all into your 401k and not pay any taxes. How does that sound to you?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Okay, you're not going to have any money though for anything else.
That's terrible. I
Okay, you
mean,
see,
I don't
trade-offs.
know.
There's always trade-offs.
It's good because you don't have to pay taxes, but like on the other end, like the military does give you food every day and housing, so you want to pay for that, but you still got to pay insurance and all that, so probably would not be able to do that.
So yeah, E3 is going to be
Okay.
$28,530.
Yeah.
That sounds a lot better. What house are you going to buy with a average salary of $28,000 a year? I don't know, man. After what I just talked about, what questions do you have? What's kind of prompting you at this point to ask about?
Honestly, it's just giving me more thought about like the reality of it of my next 3 years. Like, if anything, obviously I wouldn't buy a house the first year, but like save up as much as possible throughout those 3 years, and then if more, if I stay in for, let's say I reel this for 6 more years, that's 9 years of savings, and then buy a house. Like, to me, that's a little more plausible because I'm basically I'm not living with my parents, but I'm basically like in the same boat where I don't have to pay for housing and food to an extent with the military. So I'll be able to save a little bit more.
Yeah. And one thing I want you to think about is that housing markets fluctuate. Right now, the housing market is probably at its highest or around the highest. It's starting to decrease right now. But right now, what's going on with housing is there's a bunch of people in your and my age demographic who want to buy a house. There's a bunch of people who are sitting on houses that maybe they want to sell. But if those people sell their house and they go to buy, obviously they have to purchase a new house or move into a new place. So most people have interest rates currently at 2 or 3%. So I could sell my house right now that is maybe is too big for me or I don't want. But that means I have to go buy another house with a 7 or 8% interest rate on the house. So I could sell my house that's nice right now in order to downgrade to a smaller house and pay more money for it. So right now people are locked. They're locked to their house. So people aren't selling. And what's the first law of economics? It's supply and demand. If there's a lot of demand and there's not much supply, the price of that asset goes up because there's so many people bidding for it. So the thing with housing is that it does come in cycles. There are going to be times in the future that maybe, Dylan, it's going to make sense to buy a house. But right now, in your current situation with the way the housing market is, interest rates, even with your VA loan, is still going to be 5 or 6%. And given that your salary is only going to be $28,000 and you still need to eat, you still need to pay for insurance, you still need to put gas in your car, I'm not seeing where you're going to get the rest of the money unless you decide to house hack, where you're going to be bringing it, buy a house, and then maybe you can buy a house where the mortgage is for shits and giggles. Let's say the mortgage is $3,000 a month, and you bring in 2 roommates and you charge them each $1,500. Boom, you got it. Good, you have a house now, and you better hope that neither one of those roommates ever leave you. And that's a lot of stress to be on your brain as you're also going through the army and you're dealing with all your stuff.
Yeah.
So I gave you a lot to think about. Hopefully I crushed your dreams just a little bit, but not too much. What questions do you have maybe about your TSP or about anything else like that? Do you have any other questions about housing while we're still
No,
talking?
not about housing. I think you pretty much covered all my questions about that. I have one main question that I thought about. If you were sent back in time, per se, into my shoes, what would you do? Like, what would be the first thing that you would do? And you'd be so.
Yeah, of course. The first thing I would do, because like you, I was actually born a natural saver. Like I was very lucky in that. Like I just never liked spending money. It never felt good to me. Growing up, I always looked at other people who had money and I watched them buy things. And, oh man, it looks so cool to have money. Eventually, I started making money, making 6 figures, and I started spending all that money because I finally had money. And what am I going to do with it? I'm going to go and spend it because I'm going to get mine. I'm going to get what I finally deserve. If I can go back to those days and talk to myself, I would tell myself that there is no secret. And because I was waiting to find the secret before I started saving money. I needed to find the right investment. I needed to find the right thing before I started saving money. But just like working out, if I'm waiting for the secret workout plan, And until I find that secret workout plan, I'm not going to work out. I'm not going to eat right. I'm not going to sleep right. It's the exact same thing for my finances. I would have focused more on how much money can I make? We already know what your salary is going to be in the Army. Is there a way that I can have a side thing? Can I drive Ubers on the weekends? Can I do anything I can to increase my income? Because that's one leg of the stool. Second leg of the stool. How much money am I spending? I would look to see, I would try to make it a game to see how much money can I save every month. Your goal, Dylan, should be to try to, at some point down the line, max out your TSP or 401k if you decide to leave the Army, max out your IRA, and if you have an HSA, max out an HSA. Roughly, that's $30,000 a year in savings. One thing I wanted to talk with you about is, do you know what compound interest is?
Roughly, yeah.
Okay. So compound interest is the money that your money makes grows on top of itself. Right now, you have $17,000 in savings accounts. Well, your future is you could probably take some of that money and invest some of it. I would obviously keep a little bit of it for emergencies and stuff like that. And you're going to decide 3 to 6 months of expenses. Right now, Dylan, you don't know what 3 to 6 months of expenses looks like in the Army because right now you live with your parents. So I would say keep the money where it is, hold on to it, and let's see, what does Dylan's life after boot camp look like? How much money am I going to need? From there, after living with it, you can decide, all right, I should have this much money in savings. Now, let's say that we decide to have all of it in savings. So now we're just going to be moving forward doing nothing. If you, right now, this year, if you decide, hey, I don't want to go with the TSP, Chris, I'd rather go with an individual retirement account, which I probably wouldn't recommend, but say you want to, IRA limits for this year is $7,000. So $7,000 divided by 12 is $583. So if I put $583 into a Roth IRA, because you have earned income and you're in a low tax bracket, I'd recommend a Roth IRA for you. So I put $583 a month into a Roth IRA. After 12 months, that's $7,000, which is the max contribution. You're only 18 years old. Let's say you retire at 65, which is your traditional retirement age. So that's 47 working years. That maybe not be 47 years in the Army, who knows? But this is assuming that we have $7,000 you're saving every year. You're putting into your Roth IRA. Over 47 years, what do you think the stock market returns on average a year? 10%? Okay. So that's with dividends and everything included. 10% is good. Let's just go ahead and say, I don't know what the future holds, Dylan, but I always like to plan worst case scenario. So let's say the stock market only returns, and just so you know, it's 9%. It's a little bit lower. We're talking about 1%. So let's just say that we put our money into the S&P 500 or just something like that. So you said that the stock market typically returns 10%. It's actually 9% when you include in dividends, but we're only talking about 1 percentage point. So what does it really matter? But let's just say worst case scenario, we don't know what the future holds. Market only returns 7%. So 2% less than what we want. If I save $7,000 a year, starting at 18 years old for 47 years at an average rate of 7% per year, and that doesn't mean that it's 7% every year. There might be some years that the market is down 30%. There's going to be other years where the market's up 30%. On the average, though, it's only up 7%. By the time you retire at 65, you have $2.3 million. That's only $7,000 a year, every year. If we increase it and we say, let's say the future gains, or the future is predictive of the past. The past is predictive of the future. So let's give it 9%. At 9%, instead of having $2 million over this 37 years, you have $4.4 million. That's only 2 percentage points. 2 percentage points compounded over 47 years brings you up $2 million. If you take one thing away from our conversation today, Dylan, it's this. Don't focus on what way can I make, or how can I get the best returns in the world. Focus on your habits. Focus on how much money am I making? Can I increase that? If I can't increase that, that's totally fine. How much money am I spending? You are always in control of how much money you could spend up to a certain point. I mean, if there's a point where you're living in a box in order to save money, I'm obviously not going to tell you to do that. Live your life to the best of your ability. But once we have these two things in place, how much money we're making, how much money we're spending, you're always in control of how much you're spending. You're not always in control of how much you're making, especially in the Army. You're working for the government. You're going to get them as it comes, but you will continue to make more money. What I just showed you with the compound interest calculator, that is assuming that you never change. You stay at E1 for the rest of your, or an E3 for the rest of your life. And now you're making 28 You're going to be making 21, you have $21,000 to play with. That's still not a great living. I'm going to be honest with you. It's going to be very tough to live off $21,000. But you also have to counter in that we're going to have housing provided, you're going to have some food provided, and the rest of the money you can do whatever you want with. Growing up, I'm sure you saw a lot of people who were brand new Army recruit or brand new Navy recruits, brand new Marine recruits, who they get their signing bonus or they enlist, and now they're driving around the fanciest whip they possibly can. And if you're like me, you look at those guys, you're like, man, I guess the military must be just giving out Boku bucks if they have that nice car. But what you don't know is that they are heavily in debt to buy that car, because there are dealerships that sit right outside of every single military base, or at least in Camp Pendleton, that sit right outside there that offer 0% loans or zero down loans to military members. So they have that $20,000 and they just bought a $60,000 car. Well, the next 3 years of your earnings is going to paying off that one car. And that doesn't include how you're going to take your girlfriend out for a dinner if your next 3 years of money is going directly just to paying for your car. You can't even buy gas. So focus on saving, focus on how much you're spending, focus on these little things. There is no secret. That is the secret of finance. There is no secret. It's consistent effort. The exact same thing for working out. There is no secret to getting swole. There is no secret to getting in shape. It's show up every day, work out, eat right, sleep well. Same for finance. The way that you get good is by showing up to make money, control your spending as best you can, invest the difference. And investing the difference, if you don't know what you're doing and you think, I'm going to be the next Warren Buffett, I'm going to be the next Ray Dalio, I'm going to go out and I'm going to be the person that is going to find every single investment. The worst thing that can happen to you, Dylan, is that you go into the stock market and you do well day trading, because that's going to make you think that you are smarter than 99% of the other people out there. The investor, they look at the average return of the stock market of 9% and they scoff at that and say, that's stupid. I'm going to do options trading. I'm going to invest in real estate. I'm going to find the right investments. The optimizer, they focus on their habits. They focus on how much money they're making. They focus on how much money they're spending, and they let the markets do what they will, or they let their investments do what they will. Now, I can tell you exactly what Elon Musk did to become the owner of Tesla and one of the richest men in the world. I can tell you what Mark Zuckerberg did. I can tell you what Jeff Bezos did. In fact, they've all done biographies. You can read those right now. But that doesn't mean that you have the right talent, the skill, or the right timing and luck in order to pull those things off. In order to find out what the best investors are doing, you can go and see what Warren Buffett is invested in. It's called a 13F. Due to the amount of money he invests, he has to report to the Securities and Exchange Commission every quarter what he bought and what he sold. So that's public information. You can go on to Google right now and find that. Just because you know what Warren Buffett bought in the last quarter, that does not mean you're purchasing at the right price. That also doesn't mean you know what he sold. So you can know exactly what they're doing. With the investor and the entrepreneur, I can tell you exactly what to do, and there is a good chance you will still fail. Only the optimizer, by focusing on your habits, is a guaranteed process that if you focus on that, you will be successful. You might be successful with these other two, but odds are stacked against you. This is the way that I became financially independent, is by focusing on making money through my W-2 job. As I got good at that W-2 job, and W-2 just means it's the way the taxes work, by being good at my W-2 job and then expanding into side hustles. But I only expanded into side hustles after I was good with my primary job. I wasn't trying to chase 16 rabbits. If you try chasing 16 rabbits, you're going to fail at catching any rabbits. You have to focus on one thing, get good at that. Once you catch that rabbit, once you're good at the army, then you can go on and try to catch another rabbit. Then you can move into real estate, move into whatever you want. Only through optimizing can I guarantee that you, myself, and thousands of other people who have pursued the path of financial independence, most people went through the optimizing path, because that's the one way that we know works. I can't guarantee that if you go the entrepreneurial path, that it's going to work for you. The definition of an entrepreneur is opening a business with a higher likelihood of failing. I'm an entrepreneur now, but I was not an entrepreneur when I started. I started as a W-2 person who worked really freaking hard, saved 50% of his income, even when I wasn't making a lot of money. There was a time, Dylan, where I was making $60,000 and I was saving $30,000 every year. So I was living off of $30,000. You're going to be in a kind of a similar situation. Well, I saw people who I worked with who were going out and they were buying new cars. They were buying all these nice things. And I thought to myself, am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right choices right now? Because I get to see all these people having fun right now, and I'm just waiting, and it sucks. But I'm only 32 now. And this morning, I woke up and I went and taught a jujitsu class, exactly what I wanted to do. Then I went to the gym. Then I worked on my podcast. We made new thumbnails with me and Dominic. And now I'm having this. Then I went and cold plunge. Now I'm having this conversation with you. Every single day that I wake up, I get to do whatever the hell I want to do. And that's pretty cool. But that meant that for a decade of my time, I sacrificed in order to be where I am now. And right now you're in the forest and you're saying like, I don't want to wait a decade. So I rather have it right now. And if you make that choice, that's totally fine with me. But at some point, you're going to have to start to put in the work. And I would rather put in the work right now so that at 32, you can have the rest of your life do whatever the hell you want with, rather than living your life, spending all your money and having fun right now so that you can try to figure it out at 50 so you can make it till you're 80 and die. Dylan, what is your vision of your future?
If you would have asked me that a few months ago, I would have told you. Right now, I can't. I just honestly, I don't know anymore. Military, figure out a career, and then just save until I make it up to where I can retire.
Just know that there are no quick fixes. And there's nothing I can tell you on this one call today that's going to change your life dramatically. Maybe the compound interest thing that normally gets people to be like, whoa, I can kind of see how money adds up pretty quickly. $7,000 a year over 47 years at 9% a year, you're going to have $4.4 million. That sounds pretty good. But that also means that you're going to be sacrificing $7,000 a year that you can't use right now, that you're going to use for your future. Most people are unwilling to make that sacrifice because they want to have theirs right now. They want to have their cake and they want to eat it. And unfortunately, in life, there is always a trade-off. And you have to be comfortable with those trade-offs. You have to understand those trade-offs. So as you continue to go forward, find people that you trust, find people that you like. And if you find yourself moving down a rabbit hole of trying to keep up with other people, there's no reason to try to purchase things to keep up with people you don't care about or whose opinions you don't care about. So focus on you, focus on being a better you every single day. That's just going to get you to where you want to go. It's the struggle, it's the grit, it's the dealing with it every single day that's going to get you to be fit. It's going to get you to be financially healthy. It's going to get you to be the person you want to be. There is no quick fixes. It's all time, it's all effort, it's all sacrifice. Same thing with the gym.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for me, Dylan?
Not off the top of my head, to be honest. You pretty much answered every single one I could possibly think of.
So with that, Dylan, I honestly think that you're going to be super successful. I mean, I wish I was where you are at your age. I think the proliferation of information for people like you and like me who don't come from a family of people who know a lot about money. It used to be impossible to move up in the world with the exception of working hard and just figuring it out. But nowadays there's information accessible at everyone's fingertips, but it's up to you to go out there and find it. So as you continue to go on, if you decide, okay, I want to be a real estate investor, find trusted people that you trust. And when it comes to finding trusted people, always look at incentives. Incentives drive all things. If you're trying to say, should I join the Army or the Marines or the Navy? Ask your friends, ask your family, ask things. If you're trying to decide, should I join the Army or continue to be a plumber? You know who I shouldn't ask? I shouldn't ask the Army recruiter because their incentive is to get me to join the Army. That's how they get paid. It's the exact same thing for should I go into real estate or should I buy an individual stock? Should I buy anything like that? If someone is trying to sell you something, you always have to ask yourself, what is the gain for this person? And even with me right now, you can ask that same question. Chris, what do you gain from having this conversation with me? The reason we're having this conversation is because I can turn this into content and show people and try to teach people to the best of my ability that you can also be financially independent, because at this point in my life, I like money. I like to grow my money, but I don't need more money. I want to show people who grew up like me, who knew nothing about money, that it's actually not as hard as you think it is. If you stop pushing it away and stop hiding it in the closet, if you look at that monster, you realize that it's not as bad as you think it is. If I could teach one person that they can realize I have to be my own advocate, I have to work hard, I have to keep on doing these things, then it's a success for me. I don't care if I make any money off of it. Obviously I want money. That's the goal, but I don't need money because I control how much money I spend. And once you know how much money you spend, times that by 25, that's your financial independence number. So if you know I'm only going to spend $40,000 a year between my mortgage, housing, food, insurance, all that stuff. If you times 40 times 25, that's $1 million. If you have $1 million, you can withdraw 4% a year. And for high, reasonably degree of certainty, you can call yourself financially independent. Obviously, if you have $1 million, I'm not telling you to just go retire right now. That's a stupid idea. There's much more into that, but that gives you a rough goalpost. It gives you a rough place to start looking as to where you want to go. 25 times your annual expenses is a mile marker that you're going to want to hit. Once you hit that, bro, the door is open to you. But just because you hit that number does not mean that you've reached Nirvana and you're going to be happy for the rest of your life. Because you can be like me, you can reach that number. And when you reach that number, it's just another day. And now you have to figure out what brings me purpose in life. What am I going to do for the rest of my life? Because I think the worst thing that can happen to you, Dylan, is that you get to 20 or 30 and you've saved all the money that you ever wanted and you finally reach that number and now you get to retire and never have to work again. The first week, the first 2 weeks are great because you're finally chilling. But then after that, just like you went through with COVID, you fall into that funk because your life has no purpose.
Yeah.
You need to give your life purpose every single day, and only you can do that through hard work and dedication. And most people, they find value in life through their job. And I don't think you have to find it through your job. I found my life and purpose through jiu-jitsu, through my pets, and through my family. Those are my things. And through growing my business, having fun. That's the reason I do this, is because I think it's my mission to try to take this information that's in my head as a kid who grew up in San Diego in not a great area and learned all this stuff and now financially independent at 32 for the most part. If I could teach anyone else how to do that through hard work and dedication, then it's a win for me. And if I make money off it, that's cherries on top.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was actually, you mentioned that once you hit that goal of like however much money it takes you to be financially independent or financially like free for until you die, it's like once you get there, it's like what the heck do you do? But now you said that, that makes a lot of sense. But then on the other end of that is like, what if you like enjoy the drive up there more than you actually enjoy being up there?
That's extremely insightful. We mentioned dopamine earlier today on our conversation, and we think neuroscientists used to believe that dopamine was released when you got what you wanted. When you actually achieved your goal, you release dopamine. Well, dopamine isn't that. Dopamine is actually the seeking. So you are releasing dopamine in seeking what you want. The moment that you get what you want, you release serotonin, which feels good, but then the dopamine goes away. That dopamine is that drive. It's that thing that you want to do. For some, it's the exact same thing that Olympic gold medalists, they usually fall in depression right after winning their gold. They strive so long to want this one goal and they finally achieved it. And they thought they would reach enlightenment. They'd finally reach that ever growing happiness. And when you finally get there, you realize, oh shit, this isn't what I really wanted. Because what you really liked, what you really enjoyed was the pursuit of something greater than yourself. Pursuit of something you can never truly gain. So yeah, I mean, I like to hike. I like to do things in nature. And I always think, man, when I get to the top of this mountain, it's going to feel so good. Get to the top of that mountain, just another mountain.
Yeah.
What I really enjoyed though was the hike up there and thinking that I was going to get there. And that's probably going to happen to you. So that's what you're going to have to start thinking now is, what do I want my life to be about?
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.